changemakers. Watch Changemakers on DD India.
Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India, India's voice to the world. I'm Adil Thomas. Coming up in the next hour. Military officers in Gabon put President Ali Bongo under house arrest after they announced power seize. Hurricane Idalia makes landfall in Florida as an extremely dangerous Category 3 storm. Millions of residents evacuated due to life-threatening storm. US Foreign Minister James Cleverly meets his Chinese counterpart in Beijing, says UK is clear-eyed about disagreements with China.
We are clear-eyed about the areas where we have fundamental disagreements with China, and I raise those issues when we meet.
And in cricket, Asia Cup gets underway with Pakistan in control against Nepal in the inaugural match in Multan. While military leaders in the Central African nation of Gabon have seized power, removing President Ali Bongo from office and placed him under house arrest. This after the nation's election body announced that he had won a third term in power. Dheeraj Das has more.
Another African country is on the edge after a recent military coup in Niger. The country of Gabon in Central Africa is now facing political turmoil. The military in Gabon has claimed that they have seized power and put President Ali Bongo under house arrest. This after the nation's election body announced that President Ali Bongo had won a third term. In an overnight televised announcement, the military declared that the election results were cancelled. Borders were closed and the state institutions were dissolved.
30 août 2023.
On this day, August 30, 2023, we, the Defence and Security Forces, meeting within the Committee for the Transition and Restoration of Institutions, CTRI, on behalf of the Gabonese people and guarantor of the protection of institutions, have decided to defend peace by putting an end to the current regime. The general elections of August 26, 2023, as well as the truncated results are cancelled. The borders are closed until further notice. All institutions of the Republic are dissolved.
Tronqués sont annulés.
People in Gabon were seen holding up the national flag and singing as a convoy of military vehicles drove past. Reports suggest gunfire was heard briefly in the capital, Libreville, after the announcement of the coup. The situation has largely been calm as celebrations erupt. The whereabouts of Bongo are not yet known. He was last seen in public casting his vote on Saturday. Many countries have reacted to the coup, with Moscow saying it is closely following the situation. European Union defense ministers are also discussing the developments at the two-day meeting in Toledo in Spain. EU Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell said a coup would heap more instability on the region.
Look, the whole area, starting with Central African Republic, then Mali, then Burkina Faso, now Niger, maybe Gabon, it's in a very difficult situation, and certainly the ministers, today defense ministers and tomorrow foreign affairs ministers, have to have a deep thought on what is going on there and how we can improve our policy in respect to these countries. This is a big issue for Europe.
France has strongly denounced the coup and called for the election results to be respected.
La France condamne.
France condemns the military coup that is taking place in Gabon. France is closely monitoring the development of the situation on the ground and reaffirms its wish for the election results, once known, to be respected. So we are monitoring this closely.
Nous surveillons cela avec attention.
Niger and other Sahel countries have been battling insurgencies because of which military powers have become prominent and democratic processes have been shunned. A coup in Gabon would be a sign of further democratic backsliding in the volatile region. Dheeraj Das for DD India.
Well, to get a perspective on what's going there in the African continent, joining us this evening is Ambassador Gurjeet Singh, former senior diplomat, and also Dr. Sandeepani Dash from the Department of African Studies, DU, joining us this evening. Let me first come to you, Ambassador Gurjeet Singh. Looking at this epidemic of coup that we've seen in Africa, does that force a rethink, especially when it comes to America, Europe in particular?
I think it forces us to rethink about the situation within African countries, particularly in Central and West Africa, because evidently they are dissatisfied. There is contempt for the institutions which have been misused. There is poverty, there is a lack of security and a lack of governance. So I think that is what we need to worry about. And it is clear that the people in Gabon dislike the results of their election, which it thinks it is sold. But the people in Nigeria, there the president was properly elected, and yet he was overthrown, and there seems to be popular relief. So the issue is not democracy. The issue is governance, poverty, how to get people to live a better life. And in this, there seems to be a strong anti-French feeling.
Okay.
So it is nationalism per se, but nationalism tinged with despondence.
Dr. Sandeepani, when one takes a look at this particular crisis, is this another symptom of Africa's weak crisis response capacity?
Yes, actually, it's a very pertinent concern indeed. If I kind of understand your queries about the military coups in Africa, and it's fairly kind of frequent. And if we look at this region of Africa, especially the Francophone Africa, I think statistics says that since 2020, around 8 countries they have witnessed these coups in this part of Western Central Africa, including Gabon, and it is a kind of replay of what has happened prior to 90s. The frequent coups were happening, and now it is coming back with a interregnum of 2 or 3 decades of apparent democratic governance. So one can look at the the contemporary history of Africa, especially after these African countries got their independence in phases, like 50s, 60s, 70s and all. They all are democratically elected and aspirational governments.
Okay.
But at the same time, because of this Cold War and all, and then also these military governments and the despotic governments were supported by the superpowers and to challenge the democratic elected government, so there is a frequent coups.
Okay.
And then you have got the time of 90s, when you have got structural adjustment program and externally imposed elections, and then you find that this coup was gone. And then again you can see this again a replay of these coups in a series. So one may kind of get a feel of, I think there is a kind of semblance of these Cold War kind of situations, whereas the West is Western powers led by Americans. They are not unipolar, they are not only strong powers to flex their muscles. So and that also gives kind of encouragement for this kind of coups.
Okay. Ambassador Singh, when one takes a look at this unfolding development, does it show the stronghold that France enjoyed over many regions in Africa slowly crumble?
Yes, but I think we make a mistake if we think all of Africa is one and all the countries which had coups are similar.
Okay.
No, there are large differences. Gabon is France's best partner in Africa. Gabon is a member of the UN Security Council. Gabon has the headquarters of the Economic Community of Central African States. Everything institutional is in favor of Gabon. Yet they messed up. They annoyed their people to the point that the people reject the election and tout a coup as their panacea. So, yes, France is responsible because it has not helped in removing poverty, improving governance, and articulating the voice of the people. France is seen as friendly to whichever regime is there. Even today, France has not only condemned the coup, which I think is fine, but it has said that the results of the election should be honored, which the people don't agree with. So there is a problem there.
Okay, Dr. Sandeepani, when one takes a look at especially some burning questions that are raised, where is the elected president? Who is in charge? Is this coup very much a planned move that took a lot of planning and is finally executed? Many burning questions still to this developing situation in Gabon.
Yes, I think that this strong linkage between this kind of occurrence and this management of elections and the post-election coups. That's a strong linkage. But I think one has to look this into a larger canvas, that all these elections, there is always a regular features of competitive claim, and then sometimes ethno-political line violence, or now this like military takeover, and it's more of a talk of war between these apparently elected civilian government which is there in the country's administration for around 52 years. It's quite a long time. And then another military leader who is also he's a kind of it's a like second generation military leader with a strong economic interest, and they happen to rule together. But then all of a sudden you have a conflict of interest between the military leadership and civilian leadership, and then you have elections, and these elections are also appear to be very controversial, and then you have got these coups by somebody, and he was and the military leader was telling that the purpose of the coup was to maintain silence and security and to ensure protections of these civilian governments. But then later on one can see a lot of arsons and violence and all. So in that way, this there's a power struggle between the civilian constituencies and the military constituencies, and let's not miss out the fact that both of the factions, they speak about the peoples, but that existential linkage with the extra-regional powers are more specific to the France right now, and this is the reason why France is so concerned. And after all, this is a country which is the largest source of manganese, and also it's oil producing country, and most of these oil and mining sectors are owned by these French companies.
Ambassador Singh, why does one get the feeling that democracy is hitting speed breakers in the African continent?
Because the African Union, which was established to protect institutions and governance, has failed. African Union was to suspend every member where there was a coup, but it was also to treat those countries which amended their constitution to elongate the terms of their presidents like a coup. So it stopped doing the second part and started only doing the first selectively. For instance, Chad was not suspended, Niger is still reluctantly suspended. So, but the president of Gabon amended the constitution to give himself a third term, which is like a coup. The African Union is losing its steam, and they are not able to keep all their members intact. And when they say you are suspended and we sanction you, countries seem to carry on as if nothing has happened. So this is the most unfortunate part.
Well, a quick update there from Gabon is that according to a senior army general, still not confirmed reports, but senior army general has said that President Bongo has now retired. We leave it there. Thank you and appreciate both gentlemen joining us this evening. Ambassador Gurjeet Singh, Dr. Sandeepani Dash for joining us on DD India News Hour. Well, still to come here on DD India News Hour. EU defense ministers gather in Spain to discuss Ukraine and the coup in Gabon. UK's top diplomat is in China on a visit to mend strained ties between the nations.
Welcome to Jaipur.
Wherever news breaks, whatever it takes.
Connecting corners, cutting across continents.
Stories that matter from across the globe.
Accurate, authentic journalism that serves you right. From politics to glamour. From sports to world affairs, with a fusion of aesthetics and substance. Introducing news in a new avatar. Experience the world through a new lens. Stay tuned to DD India for an exciting journey beyond borders.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Anil Thomas. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has announced a referendum to recognize the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people. The referendum will be held on 14th of October. The indigenous people of Australia are not mentioned in the country's constitution, even though they have inhabited the land for 60,000 years. Australian Prime Minister Albanese said it will be a landmark poll in October.
On that day, every Australian will have a once-in-a-generation chance to bring our country together and to change it for the better. To vote for recognition, listening and better results. And I ask all Australians to vote yes.
EU defense ministers gathered in Spain for a meeting on Wednesday to discuss Ukraine and West Africa. They are concerned over the ongoing coup in Gabon and a recent coup in Niger, a key Western ally. The ministers are also talking about the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Well, the ongoing conflict in Gabon, such a huge cause of concern for the leaders, EU defense ministers that are meeting, and they are trying to look at an holistic approach on what exactly can be done with regards to this particular developments that one has seen in Gabon and also West Africa. Well, we've got, on that story, we've got Giles Gibson joining us from Rome to get us the latest. Giles, how does one look at the recent developments in West Africa? Why is it such a big issue for Europe?
Well, EU ministers were going into this meeting believing that support for Ukraine was going to be right at the top of the agenda, but of course international events have a way of surprising you and certainly surprising ministers when they're meeting for these sorts of talks. EU ministers woke up to those images of military leaders in Gabon going on television and announcing that they were seizing power in the country from the long-time president. We saw Joseph Borrell, the EU's top diplomat, being pretty cautious as he was heading into these talks in Toledo in Spain, saying that they needed to see how the situation played out. But he was very clear, saying that military coups increase stability across the entire region, and that of course is a reference to the fact that we've seen very recently that coup in Niger and also coups in other countries in Western Africa over the last couple of years or so.
Okay, put this into perspective. ECOWAS is taking a two-track approach, one involving diplomacy, the other is military option. The African Union has a more prudent stance. Where do you see it all headed?
Well, in terms of what the EU has been doing, they have really let ECOWAS take the lead in terms of responding to that coup in Niger. And I think we could see similar a similar scenario playing out in terms of the coup in Gabon. We actually saw Joseph Borrell, the EU's top diplomat, describing his philosophy really about this. He said that it's African solutions for African problems, although he did also say that the EU would be standing behind ECOWAS in terms of its response to what's been going on in Niger. I think we cannot miss the fact as well that France, as an individual country, of course as an EU member, but also as an individual country, is a really important player in all of this because of course it's the former colonial power, it's got a military base in the country, and just this week, for example, we've seen the French ambassador deciding to stay in Niger despite the fact that the leaders of the military coup gave him a 48-hour deadline to leave the country.
Gilbert, one final word. Niger is one of the world's poorest countries. So, will these sanctions hurt more, and will they have unintended consequences, especially when it comes to humanitarian assistance?
Well, look, we haven't actually seen yet the European Union moving forward, confirming sanctions, but we saw Joseph Borrell, the EU's top diplomat, really all but confirming them. He said, "We will try to implement the same kind of sanctions that they," meaning ECOWAS, "have decided." Worth noting that these talks that have been going on in Toledo in Spain are informal, so we're not going to see any formal concrete decisions made by member states about a package of sanctions. And the same thing applies actually to the 8th tranche of military supports that has been partly agreed for Ukraine going forward. That package worth about $500 million US. So far over the course of the summer, it's been held up by Hungary, by objections from Budapest, but we are also expecting the ministers meeting in Toledo to try and get that 8th tranche of support for Ukraine across the line as well as trying to work out some sort of sanctions package when it comes to Niger and possibly Gabon too.
Well, that was Giles Gibson from Rome getting us the latest. Moving on, the Kremlin has said that investigators were considering the possibility that the plane carrying mercenary chief Yevgeny Prigozhin was downed on purpose, the first explicit acknowledgement that he may have been assassinated. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told journalists that the circumstances made it different, though he cautioned that investigations had made no formal conclusions yet about what exactly took place. Peskov also said that the probe into the plane crash was a Russian investigation and that there could be no question of an international investigation. The private Embraer jet on which Prigozhin was traveling to St. Petersburg from Moscow crashed north of Moscow, killing all 10 people on board on August 23rd, including 2 other top Wagner figures, Prigozhin's 4 bodyguards and a crew of 3 people. Russia has meanwhile issued a stern warning to Ukraine. It has said attacks on the territory will not go unpunished. This was after Ukrainian drones targeted 6 Russian regions, including an attack on an airbase in the western city of Pskov.
The actions of the Ukrainian regime will not go unpunished. Russian law enforcement structures are investigating and properly documenting all facts of shelling by Ukrainian militants of Russian regions and their other criminal actions.
Earlier, a drone attack on the city of Pskov in northwestern Russia has damaged 4 heavy transport planes. Video showed smoke and fire rising from a distance after the huge explosion, but no injuries were reported. Russian media says 4 transport planes were damaged on the military airfield. The local governor says the military was repelling the attack. Ukraine has not confirmed its involvement in the incident.
Today, the Biden-Harris administration is announcing a new package of security assistance for Ukraine to meet Ukraine's critical security and defense needs. It includes additional mine-clearing equipment, missiles for air defense, ammunition for artillery and HIMARS systems, and over 3 million rounds of small arms ammunition. This package will help Ukrainian forces on the battlefield and support its air defenses. The United States and our allies and partners will stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes.
But the US has promised to continue to back Ukraine in its war with Russia as it announced a further $250 million military assistance package for the country. The US Defense Ministry says the new package includes additional air defense and artillery munitions, mine-clearing equipment and medical vehicles. The new package also includes more than 3 million rounds of small arms ammunition. More than $43 billion in US military aid have been provided to Ukraine since the start of the Ukraine-Russia conflict. US President Joe Biden has asked the country's lawmakers to approve an additional $24 billion in assistance.
We are clear-eyed about the areas where we have fundamental disagreements with China, and I raise those issues when we meet. But I think it's important we also recognise that we have to have a pragmatic, sensible working relationship with China because of the issues that affect us all around the globe.
British Foreign Minister James Cleverly met with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi in Beijing. James Cleverly says that the bilateral relationship between the UK and China will create opportunities not just for them, but also for other parts of the world.
But alongside that, like all of our allies, whether that's America, Canada, Australia and others, it's sensible to engage with people so that we can find common ground on the issues where we can make progress on together, whether that's climate change, global health or macroeconomic stability. These are all things we have to work with lots of countries on, and we can do that at the same time as protecting ourselves from any hostile foreign intent.
Earlier in the day, British Foreign Minister James Cleverly also called on China's Vice President Hang Zhen and raised several issues with him. Britain is trying to improve ties with China after the relationship sunk to its lowest point in decades. Well, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has defended his approach on relations with China despite pressure from those of his own lawmakers who want London to toughen its stance on Beijing. Sunak said it is perfectly possible to maintain diplomatic relations with China. Take a listen. Moving on, the India-New Zealand Business Council held its first summit in New Delhi on Wednesday. Since its inception in 2014, business leaders from both countries have been working under the forum to enhance trade ties. The objective of the Council is to explore collaboration in different sectors and to showcase technology and innovative in these industries.
So there's a lot of happening in the construction space, in the automobile space, in the farming space. I think, but the scale could be a bit more bigger. And I think the exchange of ideas in the is key from New Zealand point of view is the technology which can tap into India scale and manifest that in a large scale. So I think these are the few areas we're doing really well at the moment. And our opportunity here coming to this delegation is to look at how we can strengthen this, how do we grow this, and how we enhance and amplify this. That's what we're trying to achieve.
But the Union Ministry of Communication, Electronics and IT, Ashwini Vaishnav, said that electronic manufacturing in India has witnessed a massive growth. He highlighted that 32 companies have registered for the Production-Linked Initiatives or PLI scheme for IT hardware, laptops, tablet and PCs. Companies like HP, Dell, Asus, Lenovo and Acer have registered for manufacturing hardware under the scheme. This production-linked initiative scheme or incentive scheme will generate 75,000 direct employment.
Honorable Prime Minister's vision of Atmanirbhar Bharat and Make in India has created such a strong attraction for the entire world that the global manufacturing companies are coming to India, developing products here, manufacturing products here, and we have seen the success of the mobile industry. 32 companies have applied for manufacturing in India from Make in India under the PLI 2.0 scheme for IT hardware. We are very overwhelmed by the response. It's a very good response. Practically every large company will start manufacturing laptops, PCs and servers in India, and this is going to make a huge difference.
Principal Secretary to Indian Prime Minister Dr. P.K. Mishra chaired the 9th meeting of the G20 Coordination Committee on Wednesday. The Principal Secretary took stock of arrangements for the G20 New Delhi Leaders Summit, including logistical, protocol, security and media-related arrangements. It was noted that work on the ground and on site at Bharat Mandapam was proceeding satisfactorily. For the first time, a mobile app has been made for G20 called G20 India, which is now available for download both on Android and iOS. G20 delegates and members of the media will also witness Digital India firsthand through the Innovative Hub and Digital India Experiential Hub, which are being set up at Bharat Mandapam. Despite the weather, Assam Chief Minister Dr. Hemanta Biswa Sarma inaugurated the Northeast India's longest flyover in the city of Guwahati. The 2.6-kilometer 4-lane Nilachal flyover connects Maligaon Charial to Kamakya Gate with an extension to Pandu Ghat feeder road. Built at a cost of equivalent to $5 million, the flyover has been given a colorful touch with graffiti depicting handloom, craft and wildlife of the Northeast. Still to come on DD India News Hour. After 1,500 flights cancelled in UK, air traffic chief promises it will not happen again. Hurricane Idalia makes a landfall in Florida as a major Category 3 storm threatening coastal flooding.
Welcome to Chandigarh.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Anil Thomas. A quick recap of the headlines. Gabon President Ali Bongo under house arrest after officers carry out a coup. UK's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak agrees on engaging with China after the Defence Minister's trip to Beijing. Pakistan win their opening match in the Asia Cup against Nepal, notch a 238-run win. The head of UK's air traffic control provider says that the technical breakdown that affected so many flights on Monday has been fixed and will not be repeated. Thousands of airline passengers faced delays after the air traffic control system was hit by a glitch. More than 1,500 flights were cancelled due to the issue. Air traffic controllers were forced to switch to manual systems due to the problem. Hurricane Idalia has made a landfall on Florida's western coast with fierce winds, torrential rain and rising water levels. Florida residents are bracing for an expected huge storm surge. Rahul Singh has more.
Millions of residents in Florida have been evacuated as Hurricane Idalia made landfall with maximum wind speed of 125 miles per hour. Weather agencies have predicted that Idalia will bring strong winds and cause coastal flooding. It has been classified as a Category 3 storm. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has declared a state of emergency for 46 Florida counties. He warned the residents not to venture outside. Mandatory evacuation orders have been issued for at least 28 of Florida's 67 counties.
Do not go outside in the midst of this storm. If it's calm where you are, it may be because you are in the eye of the storm, and those conditions will change very, very quickly. So wherever you are, hunker down and don't take anything for granted here. This is a very, very powerful storm. There will be...
The National Hurricane Center has warned that southeastern Georgia and eastern parts of North and South Carolina will also receive heavy rains due to Idalia. Rahul Singh for DD India.
Well, Nick Harpers joins us from Washington, D.C. to get us the latest. Nick, how does one take a look at the situation there that's developing, especially considering the fact that evacuated people, would find it difficult to find a footing in the midst of this deluge with power outages, streets flooded? What are the agencies doing to help these people?
Yeah, Neil, it's a very difficult situation. About 14 million people in the state of Florida were under weather warnings ahead of this storm. And really what we saw government agencies doing was pre-preparing for the storm. So they sent out search and rescue teams, they sent out generators, ambulances, health and medical services as well, to all of the areas that they thought were going to be hit hardest by this storm. Because of course, now that the storm has hit, it's very difficult to get those teams into those flooded areas. So they pre-positioned teams around the state so that they were ready to act as soon as this storm came through. Now, there is this fear, of course, that really the flooding that we're seeing at the moment, the storm surges, could increase over the coming hours. We heard there from Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, warning people not to go out, even if it seems like it's safe to do so. And I think it is a case, really, of this now being several hours, several days, during which we'll see very difficult conditions from the people in Florida, conditions during which they will be looking for significant help from the federal government to try and get through this tough time that they're now facing.
Okay, this particular hurricane made a landfall in Florida as a Category 3 hurricane. As it moves across the region, will it be downgraded or does it hold the same potential?
Well, we've already seen it being downgraded to a Category 2 now that it's made landfall. It's working its way across the northern part of the state of Florida. From there, it'll be moving on to the state of Georgia and then further up the east coast of the US into South and then North Carolina. In terms of distance, it's about a 400-kilometer area that this storm will be affecting, potentially bringing flooding, downing trees and knocking out power to millions of people along this east coast stretch of the United States. It will be a tough time for many, and that's why the US services who are working in these states are warning that we're likely to be seeing the effects of this for several days to come.
Okay, this particular storm coming just ahead of that busy Labor Day weekend, is there any kind of waiver that's been issued by airlines for travelers, and are the airports open, to bail these people out, especially as a shelter camp too?
Yeah, we've already seen certain moves by various airports and airlines to cancel flights. We've got about 1,000 flights currently cancelled. They've been issuing advice to passengers who are hoping to travel during this holiday weekend that they probably now need to just go ahead and change their travel plans. But on top of that, we've also seen Tampa International Airport, now that's in an area that has been particularly badly hit, cancelling and delaying flights. They were already doing that a day before the storm made landfall, and they are rescheduling flights for the next few days to come. About 3 or 4 other regional airports around the affected area remain closed, and the thinking is at this stage that they probably will do for another day or two while the officials there assess the damage and see exactly how badly hit they've been.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you and appreciate you joining us this evening, getting us the latest on that hurricane that hit Florida and Georgia. This particular hurricane is now a Category 2 hurricane, so clearly things looking settled, but the deluge that it's brought has clearly unsettled Florida, and agencies there working overtime to get things back on track. Well, going back to our story on flight delays in United Kingdom, Julia Chapman joins us from London. Good evening, Julia. Looking at the flight schedules, getting into a meltdown mode and thousands of travelers left stranded, has the National Air Traffic Service got to the root of this technical issue?
Well, what we've heard so far from them is that there was a technical failure which was caused by the input of one flight path from an airline. It hasn't specified which company that was, but there has been reporting that it was a French airline that sent some data that the air traffic control system was unable to process, and that sent issues towards the system and the backup system, meaning that all of the flight plans that were coming in and out of the UK's main airports had to be input manually by air traffic control. But what's really interesting here is the length of time that it took to get things back up and running. It was about 4 hours in total. The last time there was any kind of malfunction of this scale, it lasted for about an hour. So this was certainly much more severe. And that led to the cancellation of hundreds of flights, the delay of many, many others. And the repercussions are still being felt 2 days later. There are planes in the wrong places, staff as well. Hundreds of thousands of passengers were affected by this incident, not just in the UK, but also in Ireland, where flights were having to fly across British airspace, or should have been flying across British airspace to get elsewhere around the world. So the knock-on effects have been very significant, and there will be an investigation by the UK's Civil Aviation Authority into how this could have happened and how it could have lasted for so long.
Julia, nearby airports like Heathrow, Gatwick, were they able to handle the pressure and help passengers in this busy travel month of August?
Well, this happened on a bank holiday, a public holiday here in the UK. It's the end of the summer, just before the school year gets back and running. So there were many families who were trying to travel back to the country at the end of their holidays that were left stranded. Now, Heathrow Airport was the worst affected. Gatwick Airport was also hit, as was Manchester Airport in the north of England. So there were a number of airlines that were affected, but this wasn't a total shutdown of British airspace because flight paths were being inputted manually. They were still able to do that. It just happened much more slowly, so the capacity was vastly reduced. But now there are questions being asked about who pays for all of this, because under the law, it is the airlines that are responsible for compensating passengers, either finding a new way for them to get home. We've seen EasyJet put on repatriation flights from certain holiday destinations back to Gatwick Airport, or they had to refund the passengers who simply weren't able to travel at all. And of course, it wasn't the airlines that were at fault. This was an issue with the National Air Traffic System. So big questions about how to make them pay for that, but airlines saying they're not optimistic that they will get any kind of compensation, and the bill is looking to be around £100 million over the last few days. That's about 127 million US dollars.
Well, that is Julia Chapman, DD India's correspondent from London. Still to come on DD India News Hour. Pakistan start with a bang in the Asia Cup, score a 238-run win in the opening match against Nepal. English Cricket Board acts in favour of pay parity following New Zealand, leads to increase women's match fees in line with men.
This is the change.
This is the change.
This is the change.
This is the change.
The change is happening. It is making me fully independent and self-reliant. The change is protecting my rights, ensuring that I get my fair share without any obstacles. The change is power. Today, I have the power of technology, the power of Jan Dhan account, Aadhaar, and mobile. That is giving me unprecedented access to government schemes.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Anil Thomas. In a special session on promoting connectivity, catalyzing prosperity, High Commissioner of Sri Lanka, Melinda Moragoda, reiterated on India's assistance to Sri Lanka on economic, trade and financial connectivity.
India took the lead in providing financing assurances when the debt restructuring was called for before the Paris Club. Before anybody was willing to step up, India wrote the first letter. Parallelly to that, both Mrs. Sitharaman and Dr. Jayashankar spoke with the World Bank, the IMF, and also bilateral donors such as Japan, encouraging them to engage Sri Lanka.
As India celebrates the Hindu festival of Raksha Bandhan, President Draupadi Murmu, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and soldiers in Jammu and Kashmir state took part in the festivities. Raksha Bandhan is an annual sibling festival where sisters tie sacred threads on their brother's wrist to celebrate their bond. DD India's Rahul Singh has more.
The festival of Raksha Bandhan was celebrated at Rashtrapati Bhavan, the official residence of the President of India in New Delhi, where President Murmu received Rakhi, a sacred thread from school children.
On this auspicious day of Raksha Bandhan, I am highly obliged and thank the President of India for giving us time and meeting us.
Prime Minister Modi also celebrated the festival with school children. PM Modi greeted them with a smile, asking for their names and which class they are in, as the girls stepped up to tie the Rakhis. Girls and women in Jammu and Kashmir also celebrated the festival by tying the sacred threads on the wrists of soldiers guarding India's borders.
हमें अपनी इंडियन आर्मी पर बड़ा फख्र है कि हमारे हर मुमकिन मदद करती है। आज हम सब यहाँ राखी का पवित्र त्यौहार मनाने के लिए जमा हुए हैं। इस दिन बहन अपने भाइयों की कलाई पर राखी बांधती हैं और उनसे वचन लेती हैं कि वो अपनी बहनों और उनके परिवारों की हर आन रक्षा करेंगी।
Brahma Kumari Retreat Center in India's northeast state of Assam also celebrated Raksha Bandhan with gaiety and fervor. Rakhi represents the purity of the relationship between brother and sister, and every knot of Rakhi is a symbol of the strength of their bond. Rahul Singh reports for DD India.
The Indian Cultural Association in Sri Lanka celebrated the annual festival of Onam at the Sri Lanka Foundation in Colombo. The celebration of the harvest in Kerala symbolizes prosperity, secularism and harmony and featured cultural performances. The traditional Pookalam and Onam Sadhya were the highlights of the celebration. Members of the Indian community enjoyed an enactment of the story of King Mahabali. In addition, traditional Kasavu saris and mundu were worn by the members of ICA to give the celebrations a traditional appeal. The president of the Indian Cultural Association, Captain Anirban Banerjee, said the purpose of the celebration was to help children to relate and remember the glorious Indian cultural heritage. You're watching DD India News Hour. Time now for sports. The England Cricket Board says women cricketers will receive equal match fees to their male counterparts. The move will come into play from Friday with England's cricket team playing their first T20 against Sri Lanka. England became the second country after New Zealand to equalize the salaries of both male and female cricketers. The increase in women's match fee was recommended by an independent commission for equity in cricket, which found a significant pay gap that existed between men and women. Manchester City striker Erling Haaland was named the Professional Footballer Association's Player of the Year on Tuesday. The 23-year-old was voted ahead of teammates Kevin De Bruyne and John Stones, as well as Arsenal's Martin Odegaard, Bukayo Saka and former Tottenham player Harry Kane, who is now with Bayern Munich. Haaland's remarkable performance saw him net 52 goals in 53 matches across all competitions last season, contributing to City's treble as they clinched the English Premier League, FA Cup and the UEFA Champions League titles.
You had so much success last season. Did you think you'd be taking one of these home at the end of the season?
To be honest, yes. Yeah. After how the season ended. But again, City as a team last season was incredible throughout the whole season, and without them it would not be possible to do it. So all praise to them for making it happen, for bringing me directly into the team, to make me feel welcome, and to giving me a lot of assists, and to play wonderful and that we played wonderful football together. No, of course it's special, and it gives me motivation to do things more times and to keep on going. So of course it's a really nice thing to win this.
Well, updates from the Cricket Asia Cup, which kicked off today with the opening match between Pakistan and Nepal. Pakistan defeated Nepal by 238 runs in the first match. After batting first, Pakistan posted 342 runs for the loss of 6 wickets. Pakistan then bowled out the Nepal team for 104 runs in 23.4 overs. Earlier, Pakistan won the toss and chose to bat. Babar Azam led Pakistan's charge with 151 runs to post a commanding total of 342 runs on the board at the end of Pakistan innings. Iftikhar Ahmed also smashed a quick-fire century. Well, thousands of sky watchers in India witnessed a rare celestial occurrence as a super blue moon graced the night sky on Wednesday. But the moon is not blue in color. People throng the iconic India Gate in New Delhi to get a glimpse of the astronomical development. During such events, the moon appears slightly bigger and brighter because it is at the closest point in its orbit around the Earth. The such occurrence again will take place in 2037. This phenomenon takes place when there are 13 full moons instead of the usual 12 in a year. Well, that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Anil Thomas. From all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.